Hi, my name is Jax and welcome to Bellucci Studios. In today's video we are going to be looking at room treatment. This is by far one of the most important things, one of the most important aspects of music production, and yet it is something that we often leave for very last. It's the one thing that after we've bought all of our expensive microphones and our expensive mic pre's and our expensive interfaces and spent a whole lot of money on computers, that we eventually, we decide, okay, let's do something about the room treatment. It's usually the last thing that we look at when, trying to get a better sound, when it should in actual fact be the very first thing, along with your first interface, with your first microphone. The one thing that you should be doing is doing the room treatment. Why do we need room treatment, and what is room treatment? Well, let me start with what is room treatment. What it is not. Room treatment is very different from soundproofing. With soundproofing, what you're looking to do is you're looking to isolate that room from your external environment. Thus, if you are in a home, if you're in a bedroom studio, then what you would like to do is you'd like to ensure that no one else in the house will interfere with the sound that's going on in here, and that whatever you have in your bedroom studio is not going to be interfering with the rest of the people in the house. You also want to ensure that your neighbors won't be disturbed by what you are doing, and that you in turn won't disturb your neighbors with what you are doing. So that's what sound treatment is. Sound treatment seeks to isolate that room from everything else. Sound treatment is also fairly expensive. So what is the alternative to sound treatment? An alternative to soundproofing, Soundproofing is isolating your room from everything else. Sound treatment deals with trying to control the way in which the sound properties of your room. So with sound treatment, you're looking to control the properties of the sound in your room. One of the first things that sound treatment does is it resolves the issue of unwanted echo in your room. Now, there are instances when echo is perfectly acceptable and perfectly warranted. If the room is created in such a way that it is conducive to really nice sounding reverb. If you think of cathedrals, they have nice sounding reverb where the speech is intelligible, and you get that nice fall off as a person speaks. It's very different to what you have in a room that has four walls with opposing walls being parallel to each other, where you have standing waves and all of that kind of thing. So if you have that kind of situation, then the echo is going to be unwanted, and it just causes a whole lot of problems. One of the main problems that it causes is that if the echo is severe enough, then you struggle to hear what's actually being said. So if someone were to sing in that room, it's just a whole wash of mess after mess after mess after mess, irrespective of how beautiful you're sounding. So it results in unintelligible speech or unintelligible audio. You just can't make out heads or tails what the heck is going on. In most instances though, because maybe there's a carpet in the room, or maybe there's a couch in the room, or maybe there's some curtains in the background, you might find that there's still unwanted echo. When you speak, or if you clap loud enough, you can hear those reverberations for 3, 4, 5 seconds after you've clapped, and that is not so nice. If the room is big enough, then that echo time will be even longer, and sometimes that echo is loud enough that the microphone will pick it up and it will mess with your audio recordings, but it's not so loud that it actually interferes with what you are saying. So the end result is that you end up with a recording that doesn't sound nice, even though while you were singing or playing guitar or doing whatever in the room, it sounds decent. It sounds like, you can live with it. But the minute you start listening back to it, you discover that there's some artifacts in the sounds that just doesn't sound nice. And that's one of the main problems that we have with echoes in bedroom studios. If you have a bedroom studio, then you probably are going to struggle with that quite a bit. One way in which to just tame those echoes a bit is throw up a curtain. The minute you do that, you are getting rid of a large amount of it, but it's not enough so that you've resolved essentially the problem of echoes entirely, and there's some other issues. So with the echoes, you also find that the bass just doesn't sound nice, because it's building up and it's doing all sorts of weird and wonderful things. Well, weird and not so wonderful things, because you don't really, it's not the kind of reverb that you're looking for. So as you're singing, you find that there's this really unpleasant smacking sound in the recording. The bass just doesn't sound good, although while you're busy playing it in the room, it sounds doable, it sounds fine. But then when you record it, that recording, if you are using really good microphones, high quality microphones, it will pick up all of the unwanted echo that you have in the room. So the first problem that we want to resolve with sound treatment is that of echoes in the room, unwanted reverb. The second thing is that of room modes, and room modes is a real problem. Once you've resolved the echoes in your room, the next thing that you will encounter is room modes. You might have discovered that, especially for the guys who are in their bedroom studios, you might have discovered that there's times when there's different places in the room where sometimes it sounds like there's too much bass, and other times it sounds like there's not enough bass. And that's what room mode does. Room modes, that's what it refers to. So as a wave travels in the room, you find that it starts doubling up on itself. So the room goes from this, the sound goes from this side end of the room to that end, and it keeps on going back and forth. And as that happens, you'll find that there's certain places in the room, as you go, actually even if you just take one step at a time through the room, very carefully listening to what's going on, you'll find that in one spot there's a lot of bass. You take a step, and as you're taking that step, you find that the bass falls off quite sharply, and now it sounds like there's not enough. You take a further step, and the bass is back. You take another step, and the bass is gone. And that's what happens. That's the audible effect of room modes, which is something that we want to get rid of by using sound treatment. So what you would need to do is you would need to employ either using bass traps, or this thing that I have on the wall over here. This is my version of diffusers. I haven't seen anything like this on YouTube or anywhere else. And most people that I spoke to, when I told them about this idea, they were like, I don't know if that's gonna work. And it's actually worked out quite well. So the bass traps, what the bass traps will do is it will help prevent the build-up of bass in the room. The diffusers helps to spread out the sound in the room, so that it also helps with preventing standing waves, and just dispersing the sound nicely in the room, so that you don't have those standing waves. So your bass traps are a form of absorption, and then your diffusers are a form of reflection. It just sends the sound back into the room in a manner that will prevent the standing waves. So standing waves basically happen because you have two parallel walls opposing each other. Now in the perfect scenario, what you would like to do is you like to build a room that allows for some of these walls to not be parallel to each other, which if you try to sell the house you might have a problem, but which for music recording purposes that would be perfect. If none of those walls were were parallel to each other and you could avoid 90-degree corners, that would be fantastic. But we live in an age where everybody wants rooms to look a particular way. Therefore, what we have to do is we have to use bass traps and or diffusers. And some people would not want the diffusers at all, and some people would want to make use of a combination of diffusers and bass traps. So there are two schools of thought here. The one school of thought is that we want the room to be as dead as possible, so no reflections at all, and we want to absorb as much bass as possible, so that what you are hearing is, strictly speaking, the sound as they come from the speakers. That's as you start mixing. The other school of thought is that you need to have some form of reverb in the room. Now, for a rehearsal space, a large amount of reverb and when I speak about reverb, I'm speaking about useful, pleasant sounding reverb. We use diffusers. A large amount of reverb is preferable. Not too large, not too much so that it all just becomes a wash of noise, but just enough so that you can, it doesn't sound like you're in a dead space, because you need that vibe, and diffusers help with creating a little bit of the vibe. And then you'd use the absorption to just absorb some of the low to prevent you'd use the bass traps to prevent the modes in the room modes. So like I said, there's two schools of thought, and the one is have the room as dead as possible, and the other is to have some amount of reverb. And if the kind of reverb that you want, I think that you'd want in a control room, is nothing more than like 2 seconds, just enough so that it doesn't sound like you're sitting in an anechoic chamber, so that it doesn't sound like you're sitting in a room where there's just a dead space where there's absolutely no reverb. You want just a little bit. So that's the two schools of thought. For me, I prefer having both reverb, a little bit of reverb, and having the bass traps in the room, because that it gives it a nicer feeling. Some people believe no reverb whatsoever, just have bass traps all around the room, low, what do they call them? They call them absorbers, that sound absorbers that absorb both low and high frequencies, so that the room is adequately treated. Bass traps just deal with broadband absorbers will deal with both high, mid and low frequencies, and then you have bass traps which should essentially just trap the bass or the low and mid frequencies. So what I have in my room is a combination of the diffusers, which is this over here, and then the bass traps, which you see in the back over there. Now, to create the bass traps or the diffusers, there's a lot of videos out on YouTube where you can learn all about how to create these diffusers and the bass traps. So I'm not gonna show you how to do that. Just go on YouTube, type in bass traps, type in diffusers, you'll find a whole bunch of videos. And you'll also find various videos that deal with how you can place them in the room. I did come across a video once where this guy is considered an expert in sound treatment or acoustic treatment, and what he said was that this happened actually quite by accident, is that the cloud, the bass traps that are above the sound engineer or the person that's doing the mixing, the bass traps above the engineer needs to have a slight gap in them. And I thought to myself, maybe this guy is he's been doing this thing for too long, his stuff is going to his head. And but I listened to what he had to say nonetheless, and I thought, that's an interesting observation. What happened when I put my bass traps up for the first time was that the bass traps were right next to each other, and I found that the room was it sounded very dead. Even though I had the diffusers in the room, it still sounded just a little bit too dead. It sounded like there was something missing. I then remembered this the chat that this guy had about having the space, a slight space in your bass traps which are above you, and I did the same thing, and I discovered that, you know, if the size of the opening between the traps above you are big enough, it actually sounds quite pleasant. It makes the room sound just a little bit more lively than if you have one solid panel of broadband absorption above your head. So for me, my setup with this strip that we have over here, that's chipboard at the bottom, and then the pieces of wood that are running from top to bottom, those pieces of wood have a slightly convex shape. So the reason for that is that I believe that it will act as a diffuser and send the sound in all directions. So the chipboard, the part at the back, has a nice resonance. My desk is also made of the exact same material, and I found that when I left my phone on it, it just had a nice full sound to it. So I thought, why not put that up on the walls as well, and that could add, you know, just a little nice rich feeling to whatever reverb there would be in the room, and then have the strips of wood also just send that sound out in all different directions. So on this wall I've got these strips of wood lined up vertically, and on the wall behind me I have just one small piece of wood where those strips are lined horizontally, and then I've got two bass traps on either side of it, and that has resulted in a very nice even distribution of the bass, where there's, you know, just enough reverb, and the bass traps then also just take out enough of those frequencies so that the room is relatively flat. The best spot in my room is the place right here by the desk, in the sweet spot. That's the best place. The second best place would be right in the couch in the couch in front of the wall that has the acoustic treatment. That also, if you're sitting quite low, it also sounds very nice. But the minute you start, if you stand up, if you're like 1.6 meters tall, or if you're about 1.6 meters tall or taller, you'll then start to hear that, because there's no treatment up in this corner. On this side there is treatment, on that back wall there's treatment, and on these walls over here there's treatment. So at a certain level at the back it sounds decent, but the minute you get up to a certain height, about 1.6 meters, then the sound starts getting, you start hearing those room modes, or you start being affected by those room modes. So for me, this is the best spot in the room. And then if I want to record guitars, or if I want to do vocals, I have a few more options. I can either move close to the back where the acoustic treatment is over there, or I can stand closer to this side. On this wall right in front of me there's no treatment, but in that corner there is. So there's a slight arc over here that I know I can record in. And putting this up, people said there were quite a few people that I approached. The one guy was someone that does acoustic treatment for a living, and he didn't know whether this would work or not. So I took a huge gamble doing these reflectors like this or diffusers, but it's paid off, and it's worked out quite nicely. So if you have enjoyed this video, well, I hope you have enjoyed this video. I certainly have enjoyed just talking a little bit about about the way this is set up. And the thing is that with the exact same gear that I have right now, if I take this acoustic treatment out, then the quality of my recording suffers tremendously. If I bring that back in, the quality of my recordings improves greatly. So it is an expense, all depending on how much money you have. That will determine whether you're going to buy your acoustic treatment as ready-made ready to hang kind of parts, or whether you are going to have to create them yourself and get your hands dirty. And it makes a huge difference. It has benefit. It's the single cheapest investment that I have in my studio that has made the most difference. So guys, I hope that you have enjoyed this video, and that if you are new to music production, I would strongly recommend that you get the acoustic treatment as quickly as possible, as soon as possible, along with your first interface, your first microphone. Get some acoustic treatment. If you do that, the quality of your work will improve tremendously. I hope you've enjoyed this video and that you found this information very useful. Please do like, share, subscribe. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. And yeah, let's learn together, let's grow together. I trust that I will see you again in the next video. Cheers guys.